I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that
On the
is a
clouds,
sad clown.
Proud of my address.
dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha Pack, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom. But really just wanted to hear your story and get to know you a little bit here. Pony likes to just remind people
what he's leaving
We've
out is
called
that
it-
you were probably the most requested interviewee we've had so far. So
Oh, I'm sure you've had just a ton of requests. Just
yeah,
the mailbox overfloweth.
yeah, you're
No,
We're
I've
number
only seen episode 1 posted.
Yep, we're gonna post them weekly, and but we are getting requests at least from one individual for more episodes. So Honey Stinger, I think, has reached out about 3 times, asking
he's
for
probably
more.
our number
He wants
one
more.
fan at this point.
Yeah. So we'll jump in. So give us your your story of how long you've been in F3 and who EH'd you. Let's start there. Let's start at the beginning. And maybe what does your name mean? Some of us have heard that story, but I don't know, you might give us a different version this time.
Okay, so my wife worked with Wait Time at the Med Center, and he and I had gotten to know each other, and we'd bonded through music. And this was in 2017, and I was recruiting him to join the Maha Music Festival board because we had an opening coming up and we needed somebody with his skill set. And I knew he would love it and he'd be passionate about it. He told me, he's like, I don't have the capacity. I'm getting ready to launch this F3 thing in Omaha because I miss it. He had been in Omaha for about 2 years at the time. And he hadn't been able to post except for when he went home, either back to Indiana, Kentucky area, or back to North Carolina. And so we kind of did a little quid pro quo where I said, I'll help you launch this thing if you join the board. So that's what happened. So I started out one morning at Stinson at 5:30 on a Tuesday, I think it was, or Thursday. Met Selleck, met Placebo. We started working out. That would have been in January of 18. And yeah, there's a couple other guys who've since moved on to Denver, Bluegrass and Kurds. And we kind of, he taught us, he coached us up. He taught us how to do a workout, how to design a workout, how to run a COT. And then we started laying the groundwork, telling guys about the launch. And then one of the last workouts we did before the launch was at Stinson, and he was ready to name us. And he had something in his back pocket that he was going to name me. And so after Namarama, he had invited me in to tell my story, and I'm like, I'm from Southern Missouri. I grew up in Springfield, went to school in Iowa, met a girl in Brazil, called my mom, told her I'd met a woman, thought I was in love, and luckily she's from Omaha. And he was blown away. He had no idea. So I still, to this day, don't know what his name for me was. I don't know what he had in his back pocket, but he looked at me and he goes, "Your name is Brazilian." And so that's how I got it. And we launched.
Was that first Namarama as awkward as they are now? I mean, was it
way more awkward? Because there
were fewer guys.
Debo and I think Bluegrass. And And so
Right.
we were just like, "Fuck, what's going on? What's this guy doing?" So
And, yeah, that's awesome. I'm surprised that he waited, that he didn't want to name you guys on the first try, but maybe he wanted to get to know you a little bit first.
he or Selleck may be able to clarify. I mean, those cold mornings kind of all run together. But we weren't posting to Twitter or doing backblasts or anything like that. It was just 6 of us meeting up and figuring out what in the world Chad wants to do.
I imagine that it's a lot different than you imagined it would be, almost 3 years in. I guess what were your thoughts going into it?
I'd done a bunch of research online and I'd seen all the Twitter posts. And I remember reading like some of the Q source and just, I had gone through a really tough time that fall. My best friend had a stroke at age 39. It was a significant one, and so I'd gone through some pretty dark times. I was working out a lot, but I wasn't really talking to anybody about what I was going through with Mike's stroke and what the effect it had on me and my ability to deal with it. And so I think I knew I needed something. And I kind of figured out that just lifting weights by myself in my garage 6 days a week probably wasn't the answer. So no, I remember texting Chad 3 years ago tomorrow on my way to the workout that it was the first morning, and I didn't know how many months that I woke up excited, because up until that point for the past 6-7 months I've been waking up and just really sad and upset and dealing with the prospect that my best friend here in Omaha, one of my closest friends in the world, was going to forever be changed. It wasn't going to be the same person that I'd grown to love, and who was the first person to ever call me a brother and made me feel like he meant it. So it's been a huge part of my life, coming to terms with what's happened to Mike, being able to grow in my relationship with Mike still to this day and staying close to him. But it's definitely filled a void for me.
That's awesome, man. I don't think I ever heard you share that story, so I appreciate that. The listeners will get a first-time Brazilian insight. But tell me a little bit more about those early moments, or even, so it's, we're coming up on 3 years. What's been like your favorite moment, or are there moments where you get that excitement again? Is that a reoccurring thing that's kind of helped you stay involved, or talk us through that? Any favorite moments that are sticking out for you?
It's so hard to say because, I just went home over the weekend, and a bunch of my buddies from back home I grew up with together were really close. But I think it's just like realizing how lucky I am to be a transplant in this town. I've been here for a while, but I have so many friendships. I have so many relationships. And F3 is such a huge part of my life. Not because I get up and go work out, but because of all of these guys that I've gotten to know and gotten to know their families. And now my kids are friends with their friends, and our wives have gotten to be closer. And, it's just increasing the quality of life. When you're out shopping and you run into somebody, or, I was out hiking one day and I ran into Kingpin, and, it's just like I didn't recognize him at first. We walked right past each other, but just those those encounters that happen out in the wild, and you know what? All it is just a stupid excuse to be like, hey, I know you. It's okay for us to talk to each other. because we've worked out together. And, you know, it's not like Kingpin and I have some deep bond, but because we have watched each other be idiots and do monkey humpers at the same time, like if I see him out in public, I'd be like, hey, man, it's great to see you. And so, but, you know, there's been so many individual instances. I mean, I got one of my best friends from back home to post once, and he just refused to work out, and he laid down the whole time. And he told him, I was like, all right, you're going to say Morgan Honey 38 F and G, and we got to him, and I forget who was on the queue, but they got to him, and he goes, Morgan Honey 38 Horn Dog. We're like, you don't get to name yourself Horn Dog, man.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And then we named him Binky because he just played on the ground the whole time. But no, there's been highs and lows. I mean, from guys sharing at COT to just getting in the best shape of my life at 40 after being a college athlete. Like, I'm in way better shape now than I was playing D3 soccer. But yeah, it's all about the connections. It's all about the friendships. And I mean, maybe the proudest moment I've ever had in F3 was this past Halloween when I was dressed up as Uncle Eddie, and I saw room service getting out of his car, and he saw me. And I don't know, it's hard to make room service really think something's funny. But if you can get one of those genuine smiles from him, it's a highlight. So getting that nod of approval, like, you jackass, way to go. That was pretty great.
Something special. Well, you do look good. I do want nobody else can see you here, but you do look like you're in the best shape of your life. I think, one of the things that you touched on, and we've kind of talked about this with wait time, but just to call out, you mentioned, like, it's not necessarily this like super deep bond, right? It's just this, it's like an excuse, like you mentioned. It's this thing that's just like, hey, I know you, and I may not even know your real name, but I know your nickname, and I see you out in the wild, and we have this connection. I think that's really important. Sometimes as men, I think our expectations of what a male friendship is kind of weird and awkward, and it doesn't have to be this like crazy deep, relationship or bond. I think that's a really good point.
Well, it removes that initial barrier where guys have to size everybody up. And, if not everybody's going to show up at F3 and enjoy it, it's not for everyone. I think eventually, if you get in the right headspace, it could be, but some guys are going to show up and it's just not for them. But if you're the type of guy who can come back twice, 3 times, who buys in, it's obvious that you're willing to be at least somewhat vulnerable, even if you don't step into the COT and share your deepest, darkest secrets. If you're willing to make a fool of yourself trying to go through some workout in front of a bunch of strangers, it just kind of gets past that machismo BS that we usually deal with when we meet new guys, and we have to, what does he do? What kind of money does he make? What kind of car does he have? Like, all that bullshit nobody cares about at F3. But
yeah, for sure.
I don't think.
I think
if there is somebody, let's kick him out.
Totally agree.
Well, you'd have to kick Plague out in an instant.
Oh, whatever.
No, something that you kind of touched on something that's been brought up by a bunch of guys, and that's some of the statements that have been made are just keep coming, or keep coming a couple times, get through that initial wave or that initial shock and awe of coming in and being new at something. For you, what was the glue, that kept you coming back? Because there's a lot of intangible things. Like for me, it was cafeteria. I was already hitting the first F fitness. That was fine. I felt pretty good where I was at, but kind of like you were talking about, I was in a place where I didn't have a lot of community or relationships with a lot of guys in the community, and that's what I was missing. So cafeteria for me was my glue. It kept me coming back. What about? I'm just curious about for you.
For every guy, it's gonna be different. Some guys John Claude never went to coffee. For the longest time, and he's one of the most engaged members of the pack. So, but he was able to make those connections on pre-runs and during the workout, and I don't know if you really were there fitness-wise already, Pony, with your once-a-month runs, but
whatever, man.
but we all find it in different places, and so for me, I think the thing that kept me coming back was the connection I had with Chad, how excited I was to see it explode, getting to see friends of mine join me on the journey. So guys like Nodos and Big One, early on, to see guys who came in and transformed themselves, like myself. I mean, if you find that picture of Nodos and I, day one, we were thick, and not in a good way.
Thick boys.
So it's lots of things, but for me, I remember just those early days, like feeling like I was an ambassador, feeling like I was part of that inner circle that brought it to Omaha. And so I just loved finding the new guy and saying, hey, who brought you out? Just first time posting. How long have you been coming out? Keep coming back. And then especially the first time I could get somebody to cue, that's awesome, because that's when that's when it really turns on, because guys go from being like, okay, there's all these other guys that know what's going on. They know all the terminology. They know how to do the workouts. They know how to do the Namerama. Like I'm a new guy. I'm lower down the hierarchy. They've been doing this longer. They're in charge. Well, as soon as you realize that nobody's in charge, as soon as you figure out you can cue and you can lead, now you're one of everybody else. Like, we're all on the same page here, man. So as soon as you can get, because like I remember the first time a honey stinger cued, and it went from trying to guilt him into showing up to him being like all out, all about it. And so watching guys make that transition, and right now we've got so many guys that are right there ready to do the same thing with all these new guys, all the new AOs. And, it's just a ton of fun to see.
You think about like Free to Lead and Q Source and just F3, right? Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. Where do you see yourself at with the three Fs? I mean, you mentioned some fitness and fellowship acceleration, and I mean, and kind of in that, like, his Q Source or Free to Lead, or how have you used those tools or models to kind of push you along the way? Any thoughts there?
I like that it's a buffet. You can pick and choose, so for me, I mean, I think Free to Lead has probably had a bigger impact on me, just because it resonated more with me than as much of the Q Source stuff. Just because I think there is a real secret sauce, and like, I love convergences. Like, Tater's birthday was amazing. I'm looking forward to this weekend, when we have the 3-year anniversary. But like, even today, if I cue a big group, like, I'm not going to go real deep on my COT. Like, there's something really, and that's why the mission statement says that it's to grow, serve, and plant small workout groups. I think there's some real secret sauce there, where men need men, but maybe we don't need a huge group of men at all times, especially when we're going get vulnerable and talk about what's going on in our own life. So, so yeah, I'm Nodos talks about being a buffet Catholic. I think I'm a buffet F3er. So, I mean, Q Source is great. I've done 3 green services now. I'm lighter than I was when I graduated high school. And there's lots of good nuggets in there. But, for me, it's all about the relationships that I'm building here in Omaha. That's the biggest thing for me.
Well, and I think to your point, right, it's a process, right? We're all on this lifelong journey. So there's really it's not like after you read the book and do the Q source, then all of a sudden life magically is figured out and you have no more room for growth, right? And through those relationships, I think is where a lot of growth happens. So I love that.
What is your least favorite workout and why?
Like exercise?
Yeah.
Burpees have grown on me. That was probably because of Queen service. I still can't do that many, but probably the hydraulic squats.
Oh boy, yeah, those are terrible.
I mean, they just tear my knees up. And also I remember during one of the small COVID workouts, Khakis had them on the sheet, and then we did them at his house, and it was 5 degrees outside, and we did it in the street.
Yeah, that was brutal. I was there for that
you,
one.
Khakis.
That was terrible. Yeah.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah, hydraulic squats.
All right, last question. What piece of advice would you give an F&G?
Introduce yourself to at least 3 people. Just if you can go to coffee, that's great, but talk to at least 3 guys that you don't know. And if you stand around after Name-A-Rama, they're probably going to come up and introduce themselves. But, even if you got to get somewhere, everybody's got 5 minutes. Even if you don't have time for coffee, you got 5 minutes to hang around and talk with your buddy that brought you, and just get to know a few people, and ask them, where do you guys usually post? Where are you going to post tomorrow? I think that'd be my advice, and we need to be good about following up with those guys and reaching out, and if you EH'd them, if you brought them, reach out and say, hey, this is where I'm going tomorrow. This is the location close to you, and even now, 3 years in, I find myself posting because of where people. I posted at Titan Alley on Monday because Jean-Claude is annoying as hell. And he's a hell of a weasel shaker, and he texts and he doesn't take no for an answer. So I would tell him FNG, make yourself available to that weasel shaker.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's a great piece of advice for them, and we could almost challenge ourselves to kind of spot those guys. The guys that are just standing around and waiting for an invitation. That's an invitation to kind of reach out to them. They're waiting for you to come connect with them. So maybe challenge anyone listening right now. If you spot those guys at a workout, say what's up to them. Introduce yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that too. Just to call out, if you brought an F&G, maintain some accountability and keep reaching out, keep EHing even after that first post. I think there's a lot of value in that too.
Well,
hey, Brazilian,
I was going to say Brazilian has to text someone probably every day. He's EH about half the PAX members in Omaha. So.
I got on early, so my branch of the family tree is pretty big, but I can't take. Luckily, Big One brought out the Ryder brothers, so that made my branch explode. But yeah, no, it's fun to get guys out, and I'll always be EH.
Heck yeah. Well, I wonder if you would just take us out with a standard Name-A-Rama. Give us your name, age, and call sign.
Blake Richards, 40, Brazilian.
Brazilian. Heck
Later,
yeah, man.
dude.
Nice job.
Love you, man.